Okay, time to celebrate another unsung Essex musical hero. And if you like your music on the rocky side, and if you attended the Wheelie Festival back in 1971 and your head was fairly clear, you might remember a local band called Hackensack. And Stu Mills, the band's bass guitarist, and Stu's record manager, Pete Sarfus, with me now to reminisce about those heady days. Welcome to BBC Essex, gents.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. We'll come to Wheelie in just a second, so much to say about that. But a Thorpe Bay man of some 30 years, yes?
Yep.
All the band from round there, are they? Or
No, when I first turned pro, I lived in Writtle for a while, and the drummer was from London Road, actually, so that's local enough for you, isn't it?
Beautiful place. Lovely Writtle.
But no, the band, when it all got together, it was based in London.
Yeah. And Nicky Moore founded the band, and for those who don't know, tell us about the great man of rock.
Well, Nicky Moore, he was originally a chorister down in Devon, where he grew up, and he came to London seeking fame and fortune, and eventually joined what was the Writtle band, and the managers then gave us a residency we managed to get a residency in London, and that's where the things really started. We were playing 6-7 nights a week, an hour on, an hour off between 6 and midnight. So that was I wouldn't say it was like the Beatles going to Hamburg, but it was like the Beatles going to Hamburg.
Well, I mean, London was, kind of the first port of call, I guess, for many bands.
It was just the routine, the work. It was a punishing schedule, and you had to go through it. And you hone your craft there, don't you? So
absolutely. When
that residency came to an end, Nicky really he's keen on writing his own material. And that's how we got started. Very difficult at first. I mean, the band we got together didn't manage to get any agency or management or record deals. Made a few demos, but we all had to give that up and for a few months until we could get back together and try and do it again.
And Pete, were you involved with the band at this point, or did you come a bit later?
My first recollection of Hackensack was really the Wheelie Festival, when a couple of my mates hitchhiked up to that event, and it took on legendary status. I believe there's in excess of about 150,000 people there. And it was just chaos. And so the reports coming back from my friends were, you've got to go and see this band called Hackensack, who opened up the whole event and wanted to play a lot longer than their allotted time. I think it was only about 20 minutes because there were so many bands there. And so I always remembered Hackensack from that period, and I got to see them just before my 16th birthday, a little club called the Growling Budgie Club in Ilford, where I lived. And the Budgie Club was run by a guy called Darryl Edwards, a very astute, hands-on promoter. He later went up to the Stone Ground in Manchester, which is a shame because the Budgie closed down. But I saw Hackensack there. In fact, I saw Budgie as well, the Welsh heavy rock band before Hackensack. And so, before my 16th birthday, I went down to see Hackensack, and they did make a big impression because they were very loud, in your face, but very tight, great rhythm section, very charismatic front man, larger than life character. And then I bought the single, which came out shortly afterwards, Moving On and Riverboat. But the album never materialised, and a couple of years went by, and I found myself working in HMV in Ilford. And I'd forgotten all about Hackensack by early 74, really, because they had more or less sort of petered out. Stewart left on bass, and a Polydor rep came into the shop one day armed with some new releases, and one of which was Up the Hard Way, and my eyes popped out of my head.
And there it is.
And there it is.
Yeah, Stu is holding it up, and we'll get some pictures of that on our Twitter feed if we can. A wonder who is the artwork by there? That is fantastic artwork.
Yeah, it's by an Irish artist called Jim Fitzpatrick. He did work for many big name bands, including Thin Lizzy and people like that. One of the top artists, and he's got his own website that features a lot of these classic album designs now, of which Hackensack were lucky enough to enlist his services.
Let's dive into some music, and we've got Riverboat to play first of all.
Yeah, this is the flip side of the single, the B-side of the single.
Okay.
And this is quite close to some of the stuff we did on stage. It was a great stage song.
Okay, let's hear it. Riverboat, Hackensack on BBC.
Now, he's got a place to be. He's making us a money on the Mississippi. Well, every night, soaking in the sun, cutting the cars and walking on the riverboat. Well, we don't know where to go. I said I'm going down south, walking on the riverboat. He got was 86, having lots of fun on seemed to be the main thing. Every day, soaking in the sun, cutting the cars, walking on the riverboat. I tell you, keep on working on the riverboat. Keep on
Stu told me to watch out for the laugh, and there it is at the end. Was that you? Oh,
No, that's Nicky.
that's Nicky.
He still does it.
Does he? It's very distinctive. Lovely stuff. Riverboat. And the B-side to was it the first single from
The
Hackensack?
only single from Hackensack on Island Records, yeah.
And as we were saying off the air, I mean, that sounds like it could have been done a couple of years ago, and you can understand how vinyl has become revived with young people kind of checking out stuff like that and thinking it doesn't sound dated and 40 years old. It sounds pretty fresh, and as Pete was saying, we think that's been covered by Ocean Colour Scene in the fairly recent past. I'm fascinated to hear more about the bands that you were supporting back in the day. There's some big old names. Tell us about those.
Yeah, well, being with Island Records, we could go out with their big names. So the first one was the Mott the Hoople Rock and Roll Circus in 1972. And that really was a circus because we had comedian and knife throwers and jugglers. And so we went on as the warm-up band.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just that. We dressed our roadie up in a bear suit. A proper,
As you do, right?
Big bear suit. So he was the dancing bear in the circus.
Where was Simon Smith?
And
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And he came on sort of halfway through our last song, dancing, and he got us an encore every night. And Mott were very good about it, but because it was all part of the show, you know. But when we got encores with Status Quo, they weren't happy. We did support Status Quo on a couple of gigs.
See, that's the danger, isn't it, with a support act? You can't be better
No.
than the act
No.
you're supporting. Otherwise, they get very annoyed.
No. Probably the best tours we did were with Free,
Yeah.
another island act. But I just love Free, and I love their bass player, and I just, that was such a privilege to go out with them. One of the tours was interrupted because the guitarist, whose name I'll remember in a minute,
Paul Kossoff.
Paul Kossoff had tripped over some wires and damaged himself in some way. Presumably wasn't quite compos mentis at the time, and so that tour was interrupted. But working with or against people like Paul Rogers, just fabulous. And of course, Paul Rogers is still going, isn't he?
Absolutely.
And,
yeah.
So and everybody in between, really, from the top to the bottom. We worked with everybody. I mean, at Wheelie, it was T-Rex, I think, were top of the bill.
Yeah.
And Rod Stewart.
I mean, we do a whole program on Wheelie, to be honest with you. But with those bands that you were working with, were you kind of hanging out afterwards, or was it very professional?
No, cool.
We've done our stuff, and then we kind of...
Yeah, we did our stuff and left.
Yeah.
Unless our gear was all still on stage, but then hopefully by the latter stages we had roadies that looked after that, so we could go.
Because that's interesting, because I'm sure a lot of people probably think there's a heck of a lot of mingling and what have you going on with these bands.
No.
And, back to hotels and living it up.
We
and
never really met anybody famous, not to be introduced to. And we shared a dressing room. I remember Lemmy coming into our dressing room when he was with Hawkwind. And I mean, Lemmy wasn't the best looking guy, was he? And he comes in with yellow crooked teeth, asking if he could borrow a toothbrush, and we're all going.
I think it's a bit late for that, Lemmy, to be honest.
Didn't bring one. Sorry.
Oh, brilliant! Love it. What are we going to play next?
Well, this is an unreleased or a previously unreleased track. We used to do this. It's an Elvis track called Heartbreak Hotel, but we did it in our own way. And live, this was just unbelievable. Nicky just went mad on this, and so did the audience. And I've got press clippings reporting the fact that we allegedly did an Elvis song. So this is it. It's Heartbreak Hotel.
I love hearing variations on classic songs. Looking forward to this. Hackensack Vintage Vinyl, BBC Essex.
Tantalising stuff.
Hackensack. Thanks once again to Stuart Pete.